What is going on, everybody? Welcome to a brand new episode of the Modern Classic Giveaway Series. Today we're pitting up the special little Sportster up against a real bike. Look at this dad bike behemoth we got over here, Spike. Look at this thing.
It's enormous.
It's very large and in charge. Stick around, we're gonna have some fun today and compare these two motorcycles.
Fellas, let me ask you something. Do you think it's cool to not wear gear? Furthermore, when you don't wear gear, do you want your scraggly chest pubes popping out for everyone to see? Look, sometimes you gotta squid, I get it. It's summer in Texas and I try my best to be ATGAT, but sometimes the inner squid wins and I wear a jersey for my ride. It was literally 105 degrees here yesterday. It felt like Satan's taint. But if you must squid, you gotta keep trimmed and neat with Manscaped. Did you know it's not just for your scraggly pubes? You can trim up anything you want on your body except for your toe hairs. It's too powerful. They won't work. The Lawnmower 3.0's got the no-nick ceramic blade. It's not gonna cut anything in hell. Beyond that, they've got these new nail shears. Look at these bad boys. Right now, fans of the Yam and those who are squidding will get 20% off their order by clicking the link below and using the code Yammie at checkout. It might not be cool to squid, but man, it does feel good sometimes, and make it feel even better by being manscaped like your sweet Papa Yam. Be aerodynamic, be fast. Use code Yammie, get you 20% off. Do it now. Thanks again for them supporting the video.
So in case you've been living under a rock and you don't know that I give away motorcycles here on this channel, this is one of our new giveaway motorcycles. It's Harley Davidson Iron 883 Sportster. Sportster Iron 883, it's a Harley Davidson. You know what it is. Check it out, you can win it for free. It's gonna be really awesome. We're giving away a ton of other bikes too. Definitely click the link down below and check that out. But Spike, why do we have this bike? Did I get this? Did I buy another? Am I falling in love with cruisers and just getting more and more of them? Are they reproducing by budding?
Mercifully, no. I don't think this bike will be spending much more time in here. This is actually a bike we rented on Twisted Road. So we decided to put together this little comparison, and most of our Comparo bikes come from Twisted Road. This is not dissimilar. So if you want to get your own bike for the day, you want to compare it to your own motorcycle, make some content like we do, click that link down below.
Don't you make content like we do? We'll destroy you. I'll kill you.
With that inspiration in mind, click that link down below, get your first free day of riding with Twisted Road. So this bike that we have here from Twisted Road is the Suzuki C50. This is actually an older model, big dad kind of cruiser, a lot of chrome. It's more in line with something like the Harley Heritage bikes. It's a big old soft tail highway munchin cruiser, but it only has an 805cc engine in it that's putting down 45 horsepower and 45 foot-pounds of torque. Sounds pretty good until you realize it weighs 611 pounds.
Yeah, so those specs on paper seem like a pretty good beginner bike, right? Not too much power, not too much, torque, but then the weight, I think, does hamper it a little bit, so we'll see how it does on the road.
Yeah, by comparison, the Harley here is making 50 horsepower, 54 foot-pounds of torque, and weighs in at about 550 pounds. So we're down a whole 60 pounds, which actually makes quite a big difference.
That's about 10% less weight coming off of the Suzuki here. And you might be wondering, I mean, these two bikes look very different, and so why are we comparing them? But I think if you're in the market for a cruiser and you want to start out, you might be looking at something like a used Boulevard. You definitely are going to be looking at something like the Sportster, so I think the comparison is pretty valid. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. These are both big 5-gearbox motorcycles that put down about the same power. This is a little heavier, but it looks like it should be heavier. It doesn't look like a big old fat Hayabusa or anything like that.
It's not the right Suzuki, that's for sure.
Yeah. One thing that actually makes this bike really good for beginners is it has a shaft drive on it, which means literally zero maintenance. You just need to take it to your dealership and have it lubed like every 60,000 miles.
Yeah.
This thing does have a belt on it, and belts are very easy to maintain, but you still have to deal with wheel alignment and all of that stuff. And generally, the Sportster, while it is a little bit cheaper in theory, this is $8,900 MSRP, whereas this is $9,499, I believe. It seems a little cheaper right off the showroom floor, but when you talk about adding a color, adding ABS, adding a security system, you're really looking at closer to $11,000 out the door for this thing, which is a lot of money for that first bike.
That's a lot of money for that motorcycle. It would never pay $11,000 for this thing. Never. And I didn't.
But what we can say just sitting here, right, is the Harley has a little bit more curb appeal
I
than
would
something like the
definitely
CT.
agree. I think based on just looks alone, I think the Harley is much more successful in the aesthetics department over this motorcycle. This motorcycle just looks a little bit dated with its chrome, big leather seat. The Harley looks a little bit more modern, a little bit more in line with what you would think of a modern day cruiser. And it just has more attitude, I think.
Yeah.
On looks alone.
I mean, they're both basically at their hearts the same, but we're really not going to be able to know until we get them out on the road.
Yeah, so let's get them out on the road. Let's see how they feel.
Alrighty, Spite. We're here. We're out here being real boys.
Being real boys today. Real boys.
The most real of real boys. We are at the Adventure Grom pit stop here. Somehow we've made it with these motorcycles the same place we made it with the Adventure Grom. I don't know how we did it, but we're just, really, really gifted motorcyclists. And yeah, I think there's a lot to talk about these two machines. Even though we just wrapped up in the shop, I think there's quite a bit to discuss.
Yeah. And, we talked a lot about specs in the shop and how they're on paper very similar, but the one thing I want to convey here in this vlog portion is just how different these two cruisers really are.
They feel completely different going down the road. Yeah. And it's going to be really interesting talking about how they are different.
Yep.
I think the one thing that I noticed just right off the bat, just coming up here with you, is like, having ridden the Sportster for a good chunk of time and now being on the Suzuki, the Suzuki is just butter smooth. It runs like a top. It's super nice and smooth. It feels every bit like an actual Japanese motorcycle, whereas this one, man, it's vibrational,
Yeah, it really just shakes and rumbles and just everything rattles. It's, we make fun of single cylinders for rattling their nuts and bolts loose.
Oh my God, this one. Yeah, this one truly does rattle quite a bit. The first thing I noticed as well when I was on this bike over that one is like this one I immediately felt confident on, I'm locking up the rear wheel, playing around with it in traffic, and just having a good time with it, whereas I never really got comfortable with the Sportster, and I'd love to think about why that is,
That's actually really funny because I felt less comfortable immediately on this machine than I did on the Sportster.
Oh, it's because you're a Harley simp. What can you say?
Yeah, I guess. The one thing I really hate, though, is not having return springs. And the pegs.
See, I got floorboards. I don't have to worry about that. I'm on a real bike.
But, so your bike is on.
It is on.
And it's not even really shaking.
And watch this.
And that wasn't even the cold start.
This thing just starts up no muss, no fuss as well. Like you turn on the starter, it feels like a Japanese bike. Just boom, turns right on.
Yeah.
But now let's head out on 1431. Have a good time. I think a funny thing that happens as well is I think a lot of people, before they ever jump on a bike with forward controls like this one, like some big cruiser, they worry it's going to be really difficult to handle or ride. But honestly, like all motorcycles kind of work the same,
Yeah.
I've ridden several bikes with forward controls now. They don't feel super weird to me anymore. And I'm just like, oh, okay, just does what it does.
You just gotta, instead of picking your feet and putting them here, you pick up your feet and put them forward.
Mm-hmm. I genuinely think that all cruisers should have forward controls. I'd be curious to see what people think in the comments about that, but I really feel like it's essential on a cruiser, really.
I tend to disagree.
Completes the experience.
I think that forwards are nice on certain cruisers. Like on that, mids would be stupid.
Yeah.
But I kind of like the mids here.
We got to get a little drag race in at some point to see how these two compare.
Yep.
It's the world's most pathetic drag race. The Ninja 300 could probably take both of us. But that's not what this is about, though, man. You get on these bikes, that's not what it's about.
Yeah, exactly. We're gonna humor all of you people who have yelled at me for comparing Harley Davidson to any other motorcycle.
You can't compare it against anything. Shh, that's our precious little baby boy. Keep him
and
safe.
And that's why we brought it out to 1431, which is a nice sweeping highway with some rolling hills. It's really kind of the natural habitat for these cruisers, I think.
Yeah, I feel like, sure, we could go down Lime Creek Road with both of these bikes, but I don't really want to, and I don't think it makes a lot of sense.
No. I mean,
this is the exact right road.
I think the first thing I want to talk about is just the general feel of these two bikes as you get on it, because that tank on there really does change the way you sit on that motorcycle.
Oh, it changes everything, yeah.
because here we have a nice narrow peanut style tank that I think really feels better, in my opinion, for somebody who wants to have a cruiser that feels like it can almost get it if you really wanted to. Like, I know a lot of people who are hardcore Sportster boys who can throw a Sportster around in ways that neither of us could accomplish,
Yes, I've seen people boosting Sportsters into the air like 12 feet.
Yeah, and I honestly think that a lot of that is down to the riding position that they kind of just come with. This little narrow tank.
It also, I think, is down to how many Monster Energies they had the day before.
Yeah, that does help.
It's like those Dyna Boys who just crack massive wheelies on them. I'm like, dude, how big are your balls, man?
Quite sizable. Oh, I didn't hit the fuel cut there. Didn't hit it there.
Time that it took this bike to hit 90, I think the R1 could have done about $180. They're very evenly matched though in terms of performance, I think.
Yeah, actually, that was a pretty surprise. Like, I think I got ahead of you just a little bit and then just stayed kind of neck and neck.
Yeah, I forgot that we were racing, so I didn't launch it, but I kind of pulled off gingerly. I was like, oh wait, I should probably rev it. And I started going.
I think off the line, that thing has just a little bit more punch.
Which is funny because it's a smaller engine.
Yeah, I think the Harley just revs really, really slowly.
Yeah.
That revs up and revs down a little bit quicker. The engine is way more precise.
Yeah, for Japanese standards, this is a really, utilitarian engine, but compared to Harley standards, I mean, this thing's liquid cooled, it barely vibrates, it makes a good amount of power for the displacement.
Mm-hmm.
I say that, but what is it making, like 40 horsepower?
It makes 45 horsepower and 45 foot-pounds of torque.
It's got to make more torque than that, right?
According to the spec sheet I looked at, it was 45 foot-pounds.
Golly. Out of an 800?
Mm-hmm.
Man.
Yeah,
what are you
not
gonna
exactly performance stuff there, right?
Yeah, not really.
But then again, it's not about performance, right? We're out here on an open road just kind of chilling and cruising. And to be honest, I kind of miss the nice wide flat seat that motorcycle has.
This bike is supremely comfortable. I'll give it that. Man, like, this bike's super comfy. I could spend hundreds and hundreds of miles on this thing, no problem.
However, how do the vibrations feel for you through the foot pegs, floorboards, handlebars?
So on this bike, the vibrations, it does have them, but they're very different from the Sportster in that they are a higher frequency vibration. Let's just get a little wheel lock up here. Yeah.
As you've got that drum brake, it basically instantly locks up.
Yeah. That's because it's Japanese brake, dude. It just works really, really well. I'm asking too much out of these tires. That's the problem. No, so the vibrations through the foot pegs, or the floorboards rather, they're very high frequency, and that can get annoying after a while. I kind of like the Harley's low B, like more lower vibration, but the Harley has a more aggressive vibrational quality to it, so you feel it more.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that the main issue with this bike on the highway is just how particular this engine really is in the way it's geared. It loves to sit between 3,000 and 3,500 RPM, and that's where it's really the smoothest, when you're neutral throttle, low 3,000 RPM.
Yeah.
And when you get outside that, the bike's not really happy.
Right.
Bigger Sportsters have slightly different gearing. I think they have an extra 2 teeth up front, so they're a little bit smoother on the highway, but they geared this guy down because of the lower displacement.
But against your point, even though these motorcycles on paper very comparable, about the same price, about the same power, this one's actually a little bit heavier than the Sportster, I believe.
Yep.
You know, their ethos is very different, right? So this is like it sits completely different. It's got this big, fat, wide seat. big fat wide tank, forward controls, footboards. It's a totally different riding experience. And you know, if you're looking at a cruiser as your first bike, or you're thinking about it, like, you know, this to me, especially with all the chrome and stuff, is like super dad mode, like super kind of like big cruisy dad bike type of thing. The Sportster feels much more like a younger person's bike.
Absolutely. I mean, just get a look at the, you know, side profile on that C50 there.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a lot of bike.
This is a real bike, Spite. Take a good long look. That right there, that's not a real bike.
Right now, I think it's worth noting that I'm holding wide open throttle going up this hill on in 5th gear. Nothing was happening.
So it's just like a Grom.
I didn't exactly want to invite that comparison, but yes, essentially.
Yeah. When you're dealing with this amount of weight and this little torque relative to the weight, it is tough getting up some of these hills. Like I'm noticing right now, I had to give it a little bit more throttle to kind of just keep it on moving up this hill and not dropping any speed.
Yep. You really do have to work the gearbox on both of these bikes. Now, one of the things that I think is actually kind of a surprising difference between these two is the final drive. That is a shaft drive motorcycle, and as a result, it feels different. I saw when we were kind of going through traffic, you were kind of hitting the throttle and the whole bike was jumping up.
Yeah.
Kind of notice that, how it had that proclivity to bounce up and down.
Yeah, it's a really different final drive on this bike, and you certainly feel it. It doesn't feel like, because with chains you have a little bit of slack and then it kind of tightens and goes, but with the shaft it's so direct that it just feels really different. Yeah.
Yeah, and it just instantly, like, it picks the whole bike up, which is really weird when you feel it. And it does cause the whole motorcycle to bounce up and down. This feels just a little bit more normal, a little bit more predictable.
Yeah.
But they're both like zero maintenance. You know, the shaft drive, you just gotta oil and lube it every like 100,000 miles. And this is a belt, so you basically have to do nothing.
Definitely. So, Spite, what do you say we pull off somewhere here and swap out and then get some of those other comparisons going? Because I feel like if we do it back to back, we'll start noticing the differences a little bit more.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, okay. That's never going to touch. My SMXs are safe this time. I just got these boots. That's why I'm like, I don't want to f them up.
They're the brand new boots, the replacement for the one that the Harley scorched. Man, look at that thing shake to life.
Oh, it's so different, dude. It's crazy. It feels so much more substantial and like just, it feels like it literally feels like a giant slab of metal, you know?
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
This feels almost, it feels lighter because of how just spread out
Doesn't it?
it
It does feel lighter, yeah, but it's not. It's like 50 pounds heavier.
It also, like, just this is quite something. Watching this turn in front of you.
Yeah, it's a whole it's a whole situation.
Yeah, okay, this motorcycle has just no character whatsoever.
I feel like that means that it actually works correctly. I wish it had wider bars, though. This thing just feels so skinny and narrow. It's really interesting.
It does need a little bit wider, taller bars. I think that's
Yeah.
one of the easy fixes we can do to it.
Yo, interesting. I actually quite like the Suzuki, honestly. I think it makes a lot of sense.
Something about the way the weight is distributed and the way the bike just feels to me, it feels cheap. It feels kind of fake. It feels like it's trying to be something that it's not.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's really comfortable. It's infinitely more comfortable than the Sportster is. This just kind of lopes down the highway, and you know, you have to drop a couple of gears, and it doesn't feel nearly as impactful.
You know what's interesting is jumping off the Suzuki onto the Harley. I actually really like the fact that this bike doesn't have a windscreen.
Yes, the windscreen on this motorcycle sucks.
I've come to the fact that, like, maybe it's because I've ridden so many naked bikes for my whole riding career that I don't really like windscreens. This is nice, you know?
Me neither. And this one specifically is literally dumping wind directly onto my forehead.
But yeah, like, I think the Sportster makes more sense to me having come off the Suzuki onto it, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, the Sportster's a cruiser for somebody who wants to have a little bit of attitude, a little bit of, you know, brawl in their ride, where they want to, you know, feel like the motorcycle is doing something.
Yeah.
Because, like, I'm just sitting here at 70 miles an hour, and I could do this forever. I could do this literally all day.
Right? Isn't
here.
it like, it's ridiculous how that bike, once you get up to speed, you're like, oh, I could just be here literally forever. I could do 500 miles on this bike, no issues.
Yeah, it's perfectly happy right here. But it's the same reason why I got rid of my VFR, right? It's because it was just too perfect. It was
That
just
is true.
fine. I really like a little bit of imperfections and flaws somewhere. And the Harley is not one for flaws.
Yeah. I still can't get over, I think the biggest thing that I notice on the Harley over any other motorcycle I've ridden is how impossibly slow the turn-in is, and how just, it doesn't feel normal when it turns in. I don't know what it is about this bike, but the way it turns in just feels like absolute
Yes. The turn-in on that motorcycle is biblically slow. It is a combination of the shitty suspension in the rear and the frame and the 19-inch tire in the front.
Yeah, it turns in unbelievably slow. And that was the funny thing about the Suzuki, is in the gas station, I was just whipping it around like it was a 300, you know?
Yeah.
It's really easy to whip around.
This is the kind of motorcycle that you see that one clip of that cop doing the super tight U-turns on his Burger King. This is
you could do some Motokana on the Suzuki, that's for sure. Try doing it on a Sportster, and that's just how to commit die. But I will say, sitting here like with my legs akimbo and my heels on the foot pegs, you know, you gotta ride this bike in a very particular way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's the Sportster. You have to commit to the Sportster style.
You do. Yeah, you really, really do.
Whereas this bike is a little bit more malleable, which is ironic because it doesn't have nearly as prolific an aftermarket scene.
Definitely not. So let me ask you this, because I'm curious to hear your thoughts. For a beginner rider, which of these bikes would be better?
Honestly, for the beginner rider, the C50.
I think so too. Yeah, I want to hear why you think the C50 though.
So the reason I think the C50 is better for a beginner rider is because it is just very predictable. Everything it does is just quintessential Japanese precision. You know, it handles very predictably, its power is delivered predictably, you know, the brakes work just fine, and because it has the just general dad bike vibe, you don't really want to push it.
Yeah.
So you're completely good to just, you know, lazily go through these big sweepers. Whereas with the Sportster, you know, little bike, it kind of wants to feel like it wants to party, even though it doesn't. And
those would definitely be my reasons as well. I think the Suzuki, even though it is a big stonking dad bike, it doesn't really feel like it going down the road. It's actually quite easy to manage and quite easy to ride. Whereas the Sportster, despite looking more diminutive and more easygoing, and like you said, maybe even more fun and ready to party, is actually a bit harder to ride than Suzuki, for sure.
Oh, 100%. I also love how the rear brake is like a car pedal. You said it perfectly. That thing is
It really
gigantic.
feels like a Ford Explorer's car pedal.
It also has like 4 inches of travel. And you know what? I gotta give it to the Suzuki here. The suspension is so much better on this bike.
It is. It's
on
actually
Harley.
really well sprung. It's got a good amount of travel. Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah, the Harley suspension is god awful.
But you know what? I actually thought these bikes were going to be more alike than they are.
Me too. They're very different.
And it just goes to show, I guess, there's a lot of variety in terms of cruisers. Like, there's a lot of variety in sport bikes. But you can't just, like, say, you know, sport bike, naked bike, super sport. It's also, you can't say you know, Sportster, Bagger, Dresser all in the same sentence. Because originally I thought it was going to come down to which motorcycle do you like the looks of better, and it really isn't just that simple.
No, they ride very, very differently, surprisingly so. One thing I'm trying to think about here is, like, I certainly feel way cooler on the Sportster than I do on the Suzuki. No doubt about it. No doubt. That Suzuki's got the big windscreen, all the chrome. This right here is, if you're a younger person, you want a cool bike, the Sportster's a way cooler bike, for sure. Like, if you rocked up to a date on a Suzuki C50, you might not go to that date.
Yeah.
Whereas on the Sportster, yeah, you might not come out. On the Sportster, you pull up, it's like, oh, he's got a bike, that's cool, you know, like, yeah.
It's just, this has no wow factor at all. There's nothing about this that anybody, even motorcyclists, would find interesting.
No, it's a very utilitarian type of cruiser, yes. But you know what? At least it's not a Bolt 250 or a Virago 250 or whatever the hell those little wretched cruisers are.
Yeah, the Viragos, those things are a little rough.
Guys, I'm just gonna say it. Don't ever buy a 250 cruiser. There's no reason for that. You're gonna be fine. Don't get a 250 cruiser, please. I'm begging you.
God, that thing is just so cool looking. It's just so much cooler looking than this.
It's so much cooler. Yeah, I feel cooler on it. That's for sure. I feel like it's more appropriate for my age. Do you want to do a little drag race? How do you feel about that?
Sure.
You want to see if you can go? You want to see if you can hang?
Go C50, go!
Yeah, 6 for 0 now for the drag races. We got at some point you have to be able to beat me. My weight can't. Here's the problem. I think it's because when we do these comparisons, the bikes are always so close that my weight deficit always helps me out.
Yup. I mean, the only way I would really be able to win is if we were taking the 1200 against the 883.
Yeah. I don't know what it is about the Sportster. I kind of just want to ride it like this sometimes, you know?
Yeah. You want to have your knees in the breeze and just man spread.
I think I'm starting to vibe with this bike a little bit more now, honestly.
Because you're not scorching your your boots on it anymore.
It did make me very upset when it burned my boot. And I wanted to kick this thing over, I'm not gonna lie. And I almost did. I was like, man, this bike. I'm about to yeet this bike off a cliff.
But it's a very cool motorcycle. It's all about cool factor. Whereas this is just all about, oh, I'm going to work.
Yeah.
I got my pocket protector and my bag lunch. I'm going to work.
Yeah, honestly, like, I'm having a pretty good time on the Sportster today, to be honest.
Good. I'm glad you're starting to warm up to it a little bit.
Yeah, it's not the worst bike ever. It's certainly the worst bike in the Yammie Noob fleet right now, but it's not the worst bike ever.
Honestly, I really think that a suspension swap on that bike is going to change it quite a bit.
Yes, I think so too, and I think, again, like, just because I feel like I understand this bike a little bit better and I'm riding it kind of the way it wants to be ridden, it's getting along with me a little bit better now, you know?
Mm-hmm.
We're getting to be buddies, you know? We're acquaintances still, but we're getting there. We're getting there.
Oh, didn't see you there. Why don't you watch this video right over here while you're at it? Because this one's over, actually. There's nothing left to see. But if you click this one right here, you could keep watching your sweet Papa Yam on video. Here on the internet, on YouTube. Click the video. Do it.